The room is cold. The walls are gray. A single metal table sits in the center. On one side, a young man sits alone. His hands are shaking. His shirt is stained dark red. 21-year-old Ethan Parker keeps asking the same question. Is she alive? The detective across the table doesn't answer right away. He flips through a thin folder. Slow, calm, controlled.
I know you were there that night. So tell me exactly what happened.
Doctors are working on her, he finally says. She's still breathing. Ethan exhales loudly. His whole body sags in relief. Tears spill from his eyes. Thank God, he whispers. Thank God. I didn't mean to hurt her that bad. The detective nods slowly, hiding the truth behind trained eyes. Because the truth is this. Hannah Parker has already been dead for over an hour. The police know it. The doctors know it. Everyone knows it. Everyone except Ethan. And that is exactly how the cops want it. Just 1 hour earlier, at 2:14 a.m., a terrified 911 dispatcher answers a call from a quiet suburban home in Ohio. The caller is whispering. His voice is shaking. I stabbed her. I think I killed her. Please hurry. Police arrive within minutes. The front door is wide open. Lights are on inside. Blood trails across the hallway floor. In a small upstairs bedroom, they find Hannah Parker, age 19, lying on her bed. She's not moving. Her skin is pale. Her sheets are soaked red. On the floor beside her, a large kitchen knife. Standing near the bed is her older brother, Ethan. His hands are covered in blood. He keeps repeating one sentence over and over. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I thought she was dead already. Nothing about the scene looks like an accident. EMS tries CPR. They try oxygen. They try everything. But Hannah never wakes up. Time of death, 2:27 a.m. Downstairs, officers put Ethan in the back of a patrol car. His head is in his hands. He's rocking back and forth like a scared child. And now, at 3:41 a.m., he is sitting in an interrogation room, being told a lie. Being told that his sister survived. Detective Mark Delgado watches Ethan closely. Every breath, every twitch, every tear. What happened tonight, Ethan? He asks gently. Ethan looks up, eyes swollen and red. We were arguing, he says. She was mad at me. I was mad at her. I grabbed the knife. I didn't think. I just acted. I stopped as soon as she fell. He swallows hard. I tried to stop the bleeding. I swear I did. Delgado leans forward. And when you saw her bleeding, you called 911? Yes, Ethan says quickly. Right away. This is a lie. The phone records already showed a 9-minute gap between the stabbing and the emergency call. 9 long minutes. 9 minutes when Hannah was still alive. 9 minutes when she could have been saved. Delgado opens the folder and slides a photo halfway across the table. He doesn't push it all the way. Is this the knife? Ethan barely glances at it. He nods. Yes. Where did you get it? From the kitchen, Ethan replies. We always kept it in the drawer. Another lie. The knife was taken from Ethan's locked toolbox in the garage. A toolbox only he had the key to. Delgado stays calm. He doesn't challenge him. Not yet. Instead, he delivers the lie that will change everything. Ethan, Hannah is still alive right now. She's in surgery. But she may not make it. Ethan breaks down. He sobs. He grips the edge of the table. I can fix this, he cries. Tell her I'm sorry, please. I'll do anything. Delgado nods. This is your chance to tell the full truth, he says quietly. It might be the only thing that helps her now. Ethan doesn't know it, but every word he speaks from this moment on will seal his fate. Before that night, the Parker family looked normal. Too normal. Ethan and Hannah grew up in a quiet cul-de-sac in Dayton, Ohio. Their father worked in construction. Their mother worked nights as a hospital aide. Money was always tight, but the home was stable. At least, that's what neighbors believed. Hannah was the favorite. Straight a student. Cheerleader. Popular. Kind. Ethan was different. Quiet. Introverted. Dropped out of community college after one semester. Spent most of his time in the garage working on old electronics and knives. The two siblings fought often. Small fights at first, then louder ones. Neighbors heard shouting through open windows, slamming doors, crying. But no one ever called police. Because siblings just fight, they told themselves. 3 weeks before the murder, something changed. Hannah threatened to tell their parents the truth, that Ethan had been stealing prescription pills from their mother's work bag, that he had been selling them, that he had gotten into serious trouble. That threat scared Ethan more than anyone knew. On the night of the killing, their parents were working a double shift at the hospital. Just Ethan and Hannah in the house. At 1:48 a.m., neighbors heard arguing. At 2:05 a.m., one neighbor heard a scream. At 2:14 a.m., the 911 call came in. But what happened in those missing minutes is where the truth hides. Back in the interrogation room, Detective Delgado keeps his voice soft. "You said you didn't mean to hurt her," he says. "Help me understand how it happened." Ethan wipes his face. "She came into the garage. She was yelling. She said she was calling Mom. I told her to stop. She wouldn't. I grabbed the knife to scare her. She rushed me. It just went into her." Delgado tilts his head. "So, it was one single stab?" "Yes," Ethan says. "That's the lie that breaks everything. Because the autopsy would later show 11 stab wounds. Defensive cuts on Hannah's arms, deep wounds to her chest, and one massive wound to her neck. There was nothing accidental about it." Delgado calmly writes note. "You ran upstairs after that?" "Yes." "And she followed you?" "Yes." Another lie. Blood trail evidence already showed Hannah never left her bedroom after the first blow. Delgado pauses. "Ethan, if Hannah survives, she may wake up and remember everything." Ethan freezes. His eyes widen. She won't remember," he says quickly. "She was losing a lot of blood." Delgado raises an eyebrow. "How would you know that?" Ethan realizes too late what he just revealed. "I mean, she was bleeding bad. I assumed." Silence fills the room. The trap is closing. While Ethan talks, crime scene investigators are finding disturbing details upstairs. Hannah's bedroom door was locked from the outside, meaning she was trapped inside. Her phone was smashed beyond repair. The blade from Ethan's knife had broken off inside her body. And the blood pattern told one horrifying story. She tried to crawl to the door. She almost made it. Back in the room, Delgado drops the pressure. "You look exhausted, Ethan," he says. "Let's take a short break. Think about everything you've said. We'll talk again in a few minutes." He stands and leaves the room. Ethan is left alone with his thoughts, and with the lie that Hannah is still alive. He whispers to himself, "She's going to hate me, but at least she'll be alive." Outside, in the hallway, another detective asks Delgado quietly, "When do we tell him she's dead?" Delgado shakes his head. "Not yet. Not until he gives us the final piece." 10 minutes later, Delgado returns. He sits again. This time, his voice is colder. "Ethan, the surgeons say Hannah's condition is critical. They found multiple wounds. Can you explain that?" Ethan stiffens. "I told you, it was an accident." "An accident doesn't leave 11 stab wounds," Delgado says. Ethan's breathing speeds up. "I blacked out," he says. "I don't remember everything." Delgado leans in. "Ethan, listen to me very carefully. If she dies, your story right now is the only chance you have to help yourself." That sentence crushes something inside Ethan. Tears fall again. "She wasn't supposed to die," he whispers. "She kept threatening me. I just wanted her quiet." The words hang in the air. Delgado's jaw tightens. "Quiet how?" Ethan looks at his bloody hands. "I covered her mouth at first, with the pillow. She was still moving." The room goes still. This matches the crime scene perfectly. Delgado doesn't hide it anymore. The moment Delgado walked back into the interrogation room, the atmosphere shifted. Ethan looked up, hope still flickering in his bloodshot eyes. He clung to the lie that Hannah was alive. Every word, every tear, every sob was fueled by the desperate belief that she could still survive. Delgado placed a folder on the table and slid it slowly toward Ethan. He looked him straight in the eyes. "Ethan, I need you to understand something. The truth is, Hannah didn't make it. She's gone." For a heartbeat, the room held its own breath. Ethan's body froze like a marionette with its strings cut. His knees buckled. A strangled scream escaped his throat, sharp and raw, bouncing off the sterile walls. His hands reached for the edge of the table, gripping it so hard his knuckles went white. "No, no, that's not possible," he whispered. She can't be dead. I did everything I could. She has to be alive. She has to be." Delgado leaned back, calm and unflinching, letting Ethan spiral. The detective had done this countless times, and he knew the raw truth often came out in the moments of denial. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm telling you because you need to be honest with me. The only way to help yourself now is to tell the truth about what happened in that room." Ethan's tears fell freely now, soaking the cuffs around his wrists. His voice trembled. I just wanted her to stop yelling. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." The confession that spilled out next was horrifying, yet oddly methodical. Ethan described how the argument had escalated, how he had grabbed the knife, how Hannah had screamed, lunged, and he had panicked, how the pillow came into play. Every word exposed a mix of fear, anger, and a warped sense of desperation. Delgado took careful notes, noting every detail. The beauty of this moment, in a grim sense, was that Ethan had believed she was alive, giving the police unfiltered insight into the timeline and his thought process. The crime scene had already painted a vivid picture. Blood splatter patterns showed the struggle. The defensive wounds on Hannah's arms and hands told the story of a young woman fighting for her life. The broken knife tip embedded in her chest revealed the force behind the attack. Yet, nothing in the evidence alone could capture the psychology of the moment, and that's what Delgado needed Ethan to provide. By 4:12 a.m., Ethan was slumped forward, exhausted, his voice barely audible. I just wanted her to stop. I didn't think. I didn't know. I didn't want to hurt her like that." Delgado kept pressing, softly. "Did you ever think about calling Mom and Dad? Getting help?" Ethan shook his head violently. "No. They would have hated me. They would have. I couldn't. I didn't." And then, for the first time, he paused. His breathing grew shallow. His eyes darted toward the floor as if measuring his words against the shadows. Did anyone else see?" Delgado asked quietly. Ethan swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "No, just me." Delgado nodded. He knew enough, but he needed more. Outside, the Parker parents were being consoled by another officer. They had been notified that Hannah was in critical condition, alive, according to the lie, but barely clinging to life. The parents' hearts were in tatters. Michael and Lydia Parker alternated between pacing and sobbing, desperate for any word. The detectives made a calculated decision. Keep the illusion of survival going, but introduce subtle pressure. By pretending that Hannah might wake up, they were drawing Ethan deeper into his own narrative, forcing him to reveal every move, every choice, every hidden thought. And Ethan, believing he could still save her, poured his guilt and secrets into their hands. Back in the room, Delgado leaned closer. "Ethan, I need to know everything. From the moment you went upstairs to that last moment with her. No details are too small." Ethan nodded, gulping. It started when she came into the garage. She was yelling. I told her to stop. I told her to calm down. She wouldn't. She tried to grab my phone, to call Mom. I got scared. I swung the knife. Just once. I thought, his voice cracked. I thought she'd just get scared. She fell, she didn't fall. She screamed. I panicked. The pillow. I just pressed it over her mouth. I didn't want her to scream. I didn't want her to. Delgado stayed quiet, letting the words hang. Ethan's confessions were chilling. He described the exact placement of the knife, the manner in which he had restrained Hannah, and the frantic attempts to stop her from leaving the room. It was the story of a calculated panic, not an accident. But the critical piece was that he still believed she could be saved. And then, in a moment of terror, Ethan made a mistake. They said she's in surgery. Please tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'll fix this. I'll do anything if she wakes up. The detectives exchanged subtle glances. Ethan's words confirmed a timeline of actions and intentions that they could later match to the forensic evidence. The entire sequence of events he described, movements, weapon handling, and responses, lined up perfectly with what the crime scene had silently screamed all along. As the hours passed, Ethan's body sagged further into despair. His voice grew hoarse. His words stumbled over one another. Delgado gave him a moment to breathe, a moment to plead silently for a sister who wasn't coming back. But the psychological trap was complete. Ethan had unwittingly painted a complete picture of guilt. Every action he described confirmed his responsibility, and the fact that he believed Hannah was alive only made his confession more reliable, more damning. By 5:05 a.m., Ethan's sobs had quieted to a soft, shaky whisper. Delgado closed the folder and leaned back. "You've been honest with me, Ethan. That takes courage. But there's one thing you need to understand." Delgado paused, letting the silence stretch. "Hannah isn't going to wake up. She didn't survive the attack." Ethan's head dropped. His body shuddered. No, he muttered, shaking violently. "It can't be. She has to be alive. I tried everything. He couldn't finish. The grief, the horror, the betrayal of his own perception collapsed on him. He had been tricked into confessing, believing his sister was still alive. Now the reality hit, harder, faster, and with no escape. The trap had worked perfectly. The cops had Ethan's full confession. They had a clear timeline. They had the psychological breakdown that would later become crucial evidence in court. But outside the interrogation room, the community was waking up to the news. The headlines were already forming in social media feeds and neighborhood chats. Local teen stabs sister. Survivor or killer? Rumors swirled. Neighbors questioned everything. Friends debated motives. Family secrets, long buried, were now exposed. And no one, not even the Parkers, could see the full extent of what was coming. Because the truth wasn't just about the murder. It was about how the police had manipulated a grieving, terrified young man into revealing the darkest parts of himself. And it was far from over. The morning sun barely pierced the heavy clouds over Cedar Creek, casting a gray pall over the quiet suburban street. Inside the Parker household, officers moved with careful precision. Their plan had been set the night before. Keep Hannah's supposed survival as a tool to extract the truth from Ethan. But now, with his full confession in hand, the detectives faced a more delicate phase, managing the family's emotions while securing the crime scene and building their case. Michael and Lydia Parker had been told, gently, that Hannah was stable but unconscious. They clung to the hope that their daughter might pull through. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that the officers outside were preparing to face one of the most agonizing moments a parent could endure, watching the person who had harmed their child, still living, while their real daughter's fate remained hidden. Ethan sat in the interrogation room, the cuffs now feeling heavier than the guilt that weighed on him. His hands shook uncontrollably, but there was a strange clarity in his eyes, a dark awareness that the detectives had skillfully nurtured. Delgado leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on the boy. "You've told me everything, Ethan. Everything. And you've been honest. But there's one thing we need to clarify." Delgado's voice was low, measured. "Did anyone else know what happened that night? Did anyone see you?" Ethan hesitated. His jaw tightened. "No, it was just me." Delgado nodded, scribbling note. And the timeline, every movement, every action, all of it? Ethan swallowed hard. Yes, everything. It was enough. The confession was complete. But Delgado knew the most dangerous part was still ahead: Ethan's parents. The detectives needed to control how Michael and Lydia processed the truth, if only to prevent panic, rage, or worse. Meanwhile, the Parker home was a whirlwind. Neighbors had begun gathering at a distance, whispering and pointing. Social media messages flew like wildfire. Teen stabs sister, alive or dead? The ambiguity alone had created hysteria in the small town. And as news vans began to arrive, the scene turned from private tragedy into public spectacle. Inside the home, officers guided Michael and Lydia to the living room. They had been told Hannah was in a special care unit at the hospital, stable, but fragile. Their relief was palpable. They clasped hands tightly, tears streaming. They whispered prayers to a daughter who was already gone. Delgado and his partner, Officer Ramirez, exchanged a glance. It was time for the next stage of the plan. Mrs. Parker, Mr. Parker, Delgado began softly, we need your help. Hannah is alive, but she's critical. The paramedics need you to answer a few questions about what happened. Can you do that for me? Michael and Lydia nodded frantically. Anything. Just tell us she's okay, Lydia whispered. Delgado let the pause linger. She is alive, but only just. You have to stay calm. We're going to do everything we can to help her. And with that, the trap tightened. Over the next few hours, Ethan was transferred to the holding cell at Cedar Creek Police Department. His confession was recorded, every word analyzed and cross-checked with the crime scene. Delgado then visited him one last time before the formal charges would be filed. Ethan, do you understand how serious this is? Delgado asked. Ethan's voice was almost a whisper. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her to stop. Delgado leaned in closer. I know you didn't mean it, but the law, it doesn't care about meaning. It cares about actions. You need to be prepared for what's coming. Ethan's eyes dropped to the floor. A single tear traced a path down his cheek. The Parker family arrived at Cedar Creek Medical Center under police escort. Officers had coordinated with hospital staff to ensure that they would be allowed to see their daughter in the ICU, maintaining the illusion that Hannah was alive. As Michael and Lydia approached the glass partition, they were handed small cups of sanitizer and guided to the observation area. Through the glass, a small figure lay motionless on the hospital bed, covered in monitors and tubes. Her chest rose and fell faintly, just enough to sustain the illusion. Michael reached toward the glass, trembling. She's still fighting, Delgado said, voice calm but cold. But you have to stay strong for her. She's counting on you. Lydia sobbed, clutching Michael's arm. Thank God, thank God. Ethan, through a separate camera feed in the interrogation room, could see his parents at the hospital. He could see them believing Hannah was alive. His own relief at this mirage was a bitter taste in the mouth of the detective. Every reaction he had, every emotion displayed, confirmed the timeline, the method, the intentions behind his actions. Back at the station, Delgado called in forensic analysts. The room was filled with a quiet tension. The evidence had already been catalogued. Fingerprints, knife placement, blood spatter patterns, and surveillance footage from security cameras. But there was one missing piece: Ethan's mindset. That was now captured in detail, thanks to the psychological maneuver. By mid-afternoon, the interrogation room was empty. Ethan had been sedated and transferred for processing. Delgado and Ramirez met with their chief to review the next step. The confession is solid, Delgado said. The timeline is airtight. But the public narrative we have to manage carefully. They believe she's alive. The media will eat this up if we reveal the truth too soon. The chief nodded. Keep them believing. Just a few more hours. Let's make sure we control the story. But just as Delgado thought they had the situation under control, a nurse from the ICU approached with a worried look. Detective, something's wrong with the monitors. The heart rate, it's dropping. Rapidly. Delgado's stomach sank. The illusion of Hannah's survival was about to be shattered. He motioned for Ramirez. Get the ICU staff to stabilize her. Now, don't let this get out. Minutes later, alarms blared. Doctors rushed to Hannah's bedside. The Parker parents were frantic through the glass. Ethan, watching remotely, thought his sister's life was hanging by a thread, oblivious to the fact that she had never truly recovered. Delgado realized in that instant that the plan's final act of deception was teetering on the edge of disaster. One wrong move, one panicked reaction, and everything could explode. The confession, the evidence, the family's trust, and the entire investigation. The detectives had set the stage for a psychological masterstroke, but nature, fate, and human emotion had a way of defying even the most meticulous plans. The beeping of the monitors echoed like gunfire in the sterile ICU, each pulse a cruel reminder of the fragile line between life and death. For a brief moment, Hannah's heart had flatlined, sending shockwaves through the hospital staff. Nurses and doctors swarmed her bedside, adrenaline pumping, as if the next few seconds would determine the fate of the entire case. Michael and Lydia Parker pressed against the glass, their hands shaking, tears streaming uncontrollably. "No. Stay with us, Hannah. Please," Lydia cried. Michael's face was pale, his eyes darting between the monitors and the frantic medical team. It was the worst moment a parent could imagine, and yet it was all a deception. Hannah's life was a carefully crafted illusion, an elaborate ruse designed by the detectives to break Ethan psychologically. At the police station, Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the live feed. His face was a mask of desperation and guilt. "No, no, don't die. Please, please survive." His voice cracked, echoing through the small room. He believed every second that his sister's life hung by a thread. Delgado watched him closely, noting the intensity of his reaction. Every word, every plea, every tear was recorded, forming a psychological map of Ethan's conscience, his fears, his vulnerabilities. Delgado exchanged a glance with Officer Ramirez. This was the final phase of their plan, the moment where the truth would intersect with the mind of the killer. The tension in the room was palpable. Delgado spoke softly into the intercom. "Ethan, you need to tell me the full truth. Every detail. I want to hear everything you remember about that night. Every movement, every thought." Ethan swallowed hard, his lips quivering. I didn't mean. I didn't want. I just wanted her to stop screaming." His voice rose, choked with emotion. I didn't think she'd." "Take your time," Delgado interrupted, calm but firm. "I need everything. Don't leave anything out. Remember, she's fighting, and she's counting on you." The words cut through Ethan like a blade. His eyes widened in horror as he visualized his sister's life in his hands. He began recounting the entire sequence. The argument that escalated in the living room, the way he grabbed the knife in a moment of blind rage, the moment he followed her into the hallway, and the terrible act that followed. Each detail was more incriminating than the last, each word a self-inflicted wound in the narrative of his own guilt. Back at the Parker home, the staff managed to stabilize Hannah, her heart rate returning to a steady rhythm. Michael and Lydia let out a collective sigh of relief, collapsing into each other's arms. Their daughter was alive at least, that's what they thought. Delgado knew the danger of revealing the truth too soon. If the parents discovered the ruse before Ethan was fully cooperative, their anger could destroy the delicate psychological leverage. The detectives were walking a tightrope. One misstep could ruin the case. One slip could mean the difference between justice and chaos. And then Delgado made a calculated decision. "Ethan," he said, leaning close, "I need you to be honest about one thing. Why did you think you could get away with it?" Ethan's hands covered his face, sobbing. I didn't. I wasn't thinking. It happened so fast. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted it to stop." Delgado nodded. "I understand. But the truth matters. Every detail. every reaction, every moment, and right now, your truth is the only thing keeping your sister alive. The words hit Ethan like a hammer. He shivered, trembling under the weight of his own conscience. For the first time, the full gravity of his actions settled over him, not just the act itself, but the ripple effect it would have on his family, his life, and the law. Meanwhile, the media frenzy outside the hospital was intensifying. Helicopters hovered overhead, news vans lined the streets, and the story of the miraculous recovery of a stabbed teenager gripped the town. Social media exploded with hashtags. Hashtag Hannah fights back, hashtag teen stabbing, hashtag miracle or crime. The detectives had to act swiftly to control the narrative. Any premature leak could compromise the case entirely. Inside the station, Delgado reviewed the footage of Ethan's confession alongside the live feed of the Parker family's reaction. The young man's eyes were wide with panic, his voice shaky, his posture crumbling under the weight of fear and guilt. Every reaction was being cataloged, analyzed, and documented. The detectives knew that this would be a critical piece of evidence in court. Not just the confession, but the emotional responses it elicited. Ethan's narrative grew more detailed, more frantic. He described how he had tried to rationalize the act in the moment, convincing himself it was necessary to stop the fight, stop the screaming, stop the chaos. He recounted the exact words he had spoken to Hannah as he held the knife, the panic that surged when he realized what he had done, and the desperate 911 call that followed. Delgado allowed the confession to flow, guiding Ethan with precise questions, never revealing the true status of Hannah's condition. The detectives had built a psychological trap, and now it was snapping shut. Hours later, the Parker parents were finally allowed a brief visit. They approached Hannah's bedside cautiously, hand sanitizer in hand, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. Delgado and Ramirez watched from a distance, tension coiling in their chests like a spring. The parents whispered to their daughter, encouraging her to wake, promising they would never leave her side. And then it happened. A subtle movement, a twitch of a finger, a flutter of an eyelid. Hannah's chest rose just slightly, and the parents' relief was palpable. They had been told she was alive, and now, in a cruelly perfect alignment with their expectations, it seemed real. At the station, Ethan watched, tears streaming down his face. She's alive, thank God." He sank into the chair, shaking, unable to comprehend that his sister's life was part of an elaborate strategy designed to hold him accountable. Delgado and Ramirez exchanged a glance. The confession was complete. The psychological leverage was at its peak. All that remained was the final reveal, the truth that would leave Ethan, and eventually the parents, reeling. But just as Delgado prepared to close the chapter, a new complication arose. A hospital nurse approached with a worried look. "Detective, there's been a mix-up with the records. There's a patient in Hannah's bed. She's a different girl. The real Hannah." Her voice trailed off, fear evident. Delgado's heart sank. The illusion, the entire psychological strategy, was on the verge of collapsing. One wrong step, one mistake, and the delicate balance of control, confession, and justice could shatter completely. For a brief moment, time froze. The stakes had never been higher. The realization hit Delgado like a physical blow. The hospital bed, the monitors, the medical staff, all of it had been part of a deception, but now a real mistake threatened to unravel everything. The girl in the bed wasn't Hannah Parker. She was another patient, a teenager who had been admitted earlier with minor injuries. The parents' reactions, the supposed miraculous recovery, even Ethan's emotional breakdown, all predicated on a lie, but one the detectives had to control immediately before it went public. Delgado took a deep breath and turned to Officer Ramirez. "We need to act fast. Contain the situation. Ethan must not know yet, and the parents, we can't let them realize it outside this room. If this leaks, the media will eat it alive." Back at the station, Ethan's hands trembled as he continued recounting his actions, tears streaking his face. He was describing the final moments of the argument, the panic as he followed Hannah into the hall, and the fateful act with the knife, every word a damning admission. His voice cracked as he repeated phrases he would never forget. "I didn't mean it. I didn't. I just wanted to stop it." Delgado stepped closer, lowering his voice to a calm, steady tone. "Ethan, you've been completely honest with me. Every detail matters. You've done the right thing by telling the truth. Your sister, she's alive. That's why I need to know everything." Ethan's eyes widened, disbelief and relief crashing over him simultaneously. "Alive? She's really alive." His voice shook with uncontainable emotion. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I almost lost her. I almost killed her." Delgado watched, noting the intensity of Ethan's reaction. This moment, raw, unfiltered, genuine, would be critical in court. Every confession, every expression of remorse, every tear would demonstrate not only guilt but humanity. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Delgado and Ramirez had already orchestrated the swap. The real Hannah Parker had been stabilized in another wing, closely monitored by a hand-picked team of nurses who understood the delicate psychological strategy. Once the real Hannah was brought to her parents, the reunion was chaotic, overwhelming, and cinematic in every sense. Michael and Lydia Parker collapsed beside her bed, tears streaming freely. "Hannah, oh my God, baby, it's really you!" Lydia cried, pressing her daughter to her chest. Hannah, pale and weak but conscious, whispered hoarsely, "Mom, Dad, I'm okay." The relief was deafening. After days of tension, fear, and uncertainty, the nightmare was ending. At the station, Ethan's mind raced. The relief of knowing Hannah had survived collided with the weight of his actions. Every detail of that night, the anger, the panic, the moment he grabbed the knife, was now undeniable evidence against him. Yet the detective's strategy had worked flawlessly. By convincing him that his sister had survived, they had elicited full, unguarded confessions. Delgado began the interrogation with precision, guiding Ethan through the full chronology of events. He asked about the argument, the escalation, the weapon, and the aftermath. Ethan responded in vivid detail, every sentence filled with guilt, fear, and regret. The detectives took meticulous notes, ensuring that no crucial admission was left undocumented. Hours passed, and Ethan's confession continued, each revelation more damning than the last. Delgado remained calm, patient, allowing Ethan to unravel emotionally while simultaneously recording every word. By the time the confession concluded, Ethan was a hollow shell, exhausted, remorseful, and fully aware of the consequences he would face. The next step was legal. Delgado and the district attorney's office prepared the case with unprecedented thoroughness. Ethan's confession, combined with the psychological evidence, would make for a compelling prosecution. Yet the detectives knew that their ethically gray tactic, the deception about Hannah's survival, would face scrutiny. The legal team weighed each detail carefully, ensuring that the confession was admissible and that the emotional manipulation would withstand judicial review. Courtroom proceedings were swift. Ethan's defense team attempted to argue that the confession was coerced by the emotional manipulation, but the prosecution presented meticulous evidence showing that the confession was voluntary, detailed, and corroborated by physical evidence and witness statements. Each point countered the defense, systematically dismantling their argument. Ethan's parents, Michael and Lydia, testified to the impact of the trauma and the shocking revelation of his actions. Their emotional testimony painted a picture of a family torn apart, a teenager's moment of rage, and the cascading consequences of one fateful night. Hannah, now recovered enough to testify, provided a concise but heart-wrenching account of the stabbing, emphasizing her brother's remorse without displaying anger. Her courage left the courtroom in stunned silence. The verdict came after only 4 hours of deliberation. The jury found Ethan guilty of aggravated assault and attempted murder, a sentence that carried significant consequences but also acknowledged his age, remorse, and the complex psychological factors at play. Ethan's parents embraced him tearfully, mourning both the tragedy and the narrow escape of their daughter's life. As Ethan was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Delgado. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Delgado nodded solemnly. "Actions have consequences, Ethan. But you did the right thing by telling the truth. That counts for something." The case closed not only with justice served but with a chilling reminder. The human mind is a labyrinth of fear, guilt, and deception. One act of manipulation, carefully timed and executed, can reveal the darkest corners of a person's soul. The Parker family began the slow process of healing, aware that scars, both physical and emotional, would remain. Ethan would serve his sentence, carrying the weight of his choices. And the detectives, Delgado and Ramirez, reflected on the case, a complex blend of morality, strategy, and justice that had tested every limit of psychological manipulation and human endurance. In the end, the truth was clear. The line between life and death, innocence and guilt, can be manipulated, but the consequences of actions, reckless, intentional, or otherwise, are inevitable. He presses the record button harder. "Tell me everything," he says. And that is when Ethan finally begins to confess, believing his sister is still fighting for her life, not knowing that, in just a few moments, the detectives are about to reveal the truth, and everything will collapse.